So one of the stories in the Quran that is very much connected with food is the story of Bani Israel when they're in the desert, and Allah sends them manna and quails. And this is a very nutritious, sophisticated food. The food of kings, really. It's a Allah definitely sends them the most amazing thing to eat. Yet the reaction of Bani Israel is, we're fed up with this. We they've had it for a few days. Can't we have some lentils and onions and some ful and some garlic? And the response of Allah is, do you exchange what is better for what is worse? But I think there's something very human about the way the Bani Israel behave, in the sense that we love the things that we're familiar with. We're not always happy to eat what is healthy and good for us. But it's very strange to think that this food that they were longing after was really the food that they ate when they were slaves, when they were under the most horrific state of oppression and tyranny. And you might imagine that the food they ate at that time is something that they would want to disassociate themselves with. But no, they were still very much fond of it. And of course they, partly the response that Musa, or that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to them, that Musa says, well, go back to Egypt, go back to any town, you can find those things there. And the point is that you've been saved. Allah has saved you from that oppression. But not only that oppression, I suppose in a sort of maybe a deeper way, there is something there about how life can tie us down, and how our appetites and the things that we love, the things we're addicted to, I suppose in our modern age, the chocolate, the coffee, the cappuccino, mocha latte, chocolate, whatever, all these different things that that we feel are an essential part of our everyday life. And a lot of it, to be honest, is connected with food. So I remember I was out in the mountains in some remote part of the world, and doing some good work, inshallah, for the sake of Allah. And we were eating very simple food. It was sort of mushed up root vegetables, no salt, no spices, nothing. It was just this mush with paratha, really bland and tasteless. And the three of us UK boys were sitting there dreaming about roast chicken and gravy and biryani and all the delicious things that we had back at home. And we long for that familiar food, even though I suppose really what Allah said to Bani Israel then applied to us just as much. Why do you want to exchange what is better for what is worse? And certainly our situation in terms of being there doing something for Allah, for His deen, was much better than whatever we were doing in the UK. But we longed that familiarity. I mean, the bottom line is we should be grateful for Allah's bounties. Whatever we have to eat, we have something to eat. We should be grateful. And I remember there's a beautiful saying of one of the scholars that the world is like food. It doesn't matter how much spice you put on it and flavors you put on it, it all comes out stinking in the same way. And I guess we should remember that. Food, it's great that food tastes nice, and if we can, we should make it nice, and especially, and more importantly, if it helps us to be grateful to Allah. But if this addiction to food, this addiction to flavor, this addiction to everything tasting nice makes us ungrateful for the things that we have, and we become so fussy that, we can't eat this and we can't eat that. And I mean, there are some things that the mind boggles as to what, like maybe eating centipedes and I know, fish eyes. I can sort of understand how some people may find that. But like people, I always find it weird when I find kids don't eat the crust of bread and like with not vegetables and certain things that, I just don't get it why or how we got to that stage where we're so fussy. My mum's a great person to talk to. I mean, she lived when she was a kid. you know, little kid, she was a refugee. She left Poland when the Nazis invaded and trekked across Russia into Tehran, and then from Tehran to Kenya. So they were pretty much hungry nearly every single day. And that stayed with her until today. And although also she has things that she doesn't like very much, but she's really very unfussy. She really appreciates the value of food. She doesn't like to throw anything away. She doesn't like to waste anything. And that is also a very prophetic attribute. You know, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us as Muslims not to waste food, and even to, you know, to clean the dish, lick the dish. You never know where the blessing is. That's what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us. But that's also part of the etiquette, is really eating everything, finishing everything, not wasting anything. And we live in a terrible time of waste. I mean, I remember it was Gordon Brown, I think he said, is that the food that we waste in England in a year could feed Africa, feed the poor and starving people in Africa. That's just shocking. So when we say there's too many people on the planet, it's not a people problem. It's a distribution problem. It's a waste problem. It's an excess problem. We should be grateful for what we have. So I'm going to cook Aunt Sophie's prawns. I've never cooked this before. My mum says it's a lot of hard work, but then my mum says that about a lot of stuff, which I turn into something a little bit easier, because maybe she ends up doing stuff that I don't really think you need to do. I'm whispering. So anyway, you have to start by thoroughly washing the prawns according to the instructions. And I have no idea why, because, you know, 2 kg of, I guess these are tiger prawns. They look fantastic. They've been frozen, fresh from the sea, I'm thinking. So I'll wash them anyway, because that's what it says, but they're going to go in boiling water. So I really just don't know what's the point of all of that. So, and you know what? I couldn't be bothered to do stuff that I don't need to do. So that wasn't much hard work. So we just happen to have a dish of boiling water ready. So in go the prawns. Careful. Right, so we've got the prawns in there. A few bay leaves, fresh bay leaves from the garden. And it says 3 to 4 peppercorns. Those are not peppercorns, just as well. I saw that. That's those are cloves. We've got some peppercorns here. 3 to 4. It's not going to do anything. Let's put a few more than that. There we go. And yeah, salted boiling water. And we are now going to boil this for 20 minutes. And look, the prawns have started to go pink already. Wow. They were grey and now they're pink. Look at them, the little eyes. I was a prawn in the sea once. Now Abu Bakr's going to eat me. So yeah. There we go. Now we have to let them boil for 20 minutes. Let's go walk the dogs. Okay, so that's just about been 20 minutes. And you can see those beautiful brown prawns have become all pink. So now we're going to drain them. There we go. And that's drained. We're going to put them back in the pot. And the next thing is the hard work, peeling. We're going to peel the prawns. I'm going to crush the skins, and we're going to make a stock from the skins and we're going to put butter in, so we're going to have this flavoured, prawn flavoured stock and butter. Never done it before, sounds amazing, and I've certainly eaten it before and it's really delicious. So there we go. So now the hard work of peeling and crushing.
That was the prawns. They weren't as good as they were, I think that was, because we overcooked it. That was an aunt of mine, again an adopted aunt in Nairobi. Her name was Sophie, but in Polish it's Zosia. It's a diminutive, you know, a pet name. And so it's krewetki is prawns or shrimps, I don't know which one it is, in the sauce. And she was a fantastic cook. She looked after me when my mother died and my sister got married. They, you know, I really spent a lot of time with them, and she was a fantastic cook. So she gave me a lot of her recipes too. Of course, in those days, you know, I lived with Auntie Nora, so you had some of the South African dishes. Otherwise, I used to leave early in the morning, then have a cup of coffee in the office. Then I couldn't exactly afford a lunch. I preferred to save money, so I had another cup of coffee, Kenya, in the Kenya coffee car. And then in the evening, I was very hungry because I used to go and play tennis or hockey. And then I was really hungry in the evening. So, so going to Aunt Sophie was fantastic. She's a very good cook.
Okay, so now we're going to peel the prawns, and because this looks like it might be a messy job, I'm going to put my apron on. Or what used to be my dad's apron. Rahimullah. Okay, so I can't say I'm an expert in peeling prawns, but we actually need the actual shells for this particular recipe. So sure, I remember peeling prawns being a lot easier than this. Okay. I'll probably develop a technique after 20 minutes. Do this enough, I'm sure you become an expert like anything. Actually, they are quite decent sized prawns in the end. Well, I definitely need to develop some prawn peeling technique, because that's it. I'm supposed to crush all of these shells. I'm really not sure how to crush them, but we'll figure that out when we get to it. I think I need to go on the internet and Google how to peel prawns quickly and effectively. I'm sure someone's developed some technique there. You see, squeeze it from the bottom, maybe that's it. Squeeze it from its tail. Let's try that if we... No, just came off. That didn't work. Worked with some, not with others. It's the old hard graft. I'm sure that's 6 now.
Okay, this is a shot.
I'm sure these celebrity cooks on the TV programs, they just like stand there, chop this, do that, and then, right, come on crew, get in here. Well, they have some people to come and do all the hard work. They just look like they're... I've got to crush the prawns now and add butter, but looking at my my aunt, my great aunt, I suppose, or my mum's aunt's Sophie's recipe, Countess Goetz's recipe, there's no numbers here except the cooking times. So I'm going to have to guess it. And I can't even if I could, even if there were numbers, it's all in Polish. So I did sit with my mum and translate it all, so I think what we've got there is what we've got. I'm just going to have to guess about what I think is, it's probably a generous amount of butter, I'm guessing. So, okay, so we're going to start crushing the prawns. Again, I don't really have much idea. Here are our prawn shells. We're not going to crush the prawns, we're going to crush the shells. And I found this implement here amongst my mum's sort of mace. So I don't know, we're going to start crushing. I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't even know why I need to crush it and how much. Yeah, you definitely need an apron for this. Oh dear. Revenge of the prawn. Again, I'm sure a hand blender might be a really useful way of doing this. Just blitz it all up. To be honest, I'm really struggling to think why this is important. I mean, okay, you're going to increase the surface area, crush it. Is it really necessary? It's all going to be boiled up. It's a lot of work. And I think that's enough. I'm not going to smash these anymore. That's it, really. That'll do. Enough prawn crushing. Maybe it's prawn crushing or prawn crushing. Okay, so that's it. Peel and crush the prawns and add butter and boil. Add butter, that's all it says. Add butter and boil. And surely you've got to add water, right? You can't just add butter and boil without water. Don't tell me we're supposed to keep the water that we boiled it all in. It makes sense though, doesn't it? Because that would have been a sort of stock, and that's then why are we supposed to wash the prawns thoroughly beforehand? Because I reckon the water that you're supposed to boil it in, you're supposed to keep that. And I was even thinking as I was throwing it away, why crush the prawn skins and then boil it when you've got all the flavour in the 20-minute cooking? That did actually cross my mind as the stock was pouring away. And anyway, that's fine. So I've added some water here. I don't know how much, just to cover it really. I'm going to put it in. I'm going to let it boil away. I'm not going to cover it, and the reason is because I think I'm going to want it to reduce. So not only to boil, but to actually reduce. And although that's not in the recipe, I'm just going to add a little bit of salt. Or probably, being prawns, it's probably salty already. And let's add some butter. So I don't really know how much butter we're supposed to use, but looking at the recipe, which we need to boil the skins with the butter, and then we're going to be leaving it overnight so the butter solidifies. So I'm expecting there needs to be a decent amount of butter. So I'm going to put in probably about 100 grams of butter. That's going to go in, and I hope that's going to be enough. That's it. Yeah, I think that's going to be, for all those prawns, that's going to be enough butter. So it's going to be about right. So that's it for half an hour, guys, more. How has being or becoming a Muslim changed my attitude or my relationship, as people like to call it, your relationship with food? I think for a lot of Muslims, food has an exaggerated importance, and I don't think it's a prophetic thing. I don't think it's something that has been taught to us by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I think it's a sort of reaction to the consumer society where in many different ways we can't participate. A Muslim is not going to be smoking spliff and drinking alcohol and going to parties and dancing and a whole load of other things that of course for us are haram, and many other things that may be halal, but they're just difficult for us to participate as a family, maybe even certain sporting activities because of the mixing or the dress or whatever. So it's almost as if eating food is our default entertainment activity. So it's like, if we're going to do something as Muslims, I suppose we could travel and see places, but that might be expensive. But you know, what do you want to do for the weekend? Well, probably we wouldn't go to the movies, but we'll go out and have food. So I think for Muslims, it's the one thing we think that we can just sort of enjoy without having to think about it and worry about it too much. I'm not sure it's the right attitude, because deep down inside there's this desire to enjoy life. And I'm not saying, of course, that we are supposed to be miserable in life, but I don't think fundamentally enjoyment on a deep level is going to come from those things. And certainly eating too much and overeating is not a good thing for a Muslim to do. But like I said, I mean, I don't exclude myself from this, and certainly eating is one of the guilt-free pleasures that we can as Muslims indulge in. But I think there's something deeper, you know, the sitting down and having a meal together, you know, sharing food with your friends. I mean, that just goes across cultures. Sitting down with your family, sitting down with your friends, going out for food. It's something that binds us and brings us together. And I don't think that's, of course, a particularly Muslim thing. I think that happens, as I said, across cultures and across people. Personally, on a personal level, food, of course, the big thing is halal. You know? I mean, halal, of course, applies to really everything. Is it halal or haram or makruh or mubah? These designations of permissibility, they apply to all things in our lives. But when we talk about halal, we almost tend to think of it automatically in terms of food. And of course, that's one of the things that you become very, very obsessed with as a Muslim, as a new Muslim. Certainly, when I was a new Muslim, I'm not a new Muslim anymore, the whole issue of what is halal was something that I, as many Muslims still do, are obsessed with. And it is, of course, very important to try and make sure that everything you eat is halal. But again, unfortunately, as Muslims, I think we have a very limited idea of halal. You know, sometimes we just think of it in terms of, has it been slaughtered in the correct manner, which of course is important. I'm not saying it's not important. Or is it pork or from dead meat or some other type of food that's forbidden for us? But it's funny how very few of us think about whether our income is halal. Because if our income is not halal, then the food we buy, the clothes we buy, the things we buy, actually, rather than being a benefit for us, becomes a source of our punishment. So the concept of halal is a lot deeper than what we think. And the other thing often we don't think about is tayyib. We all know it should be halal, but a lot of us don't think about the concept of tayyib means it's good and wholesome. So food, certainly, everything, but food is not only supposed to be halal from the point of view of being slaughtered in the correct manner ritually, but it should be tayyib, it should be good and wholesome. And there's a whole load of issues we need to ask ourselves as Muslims, especially around animal welfare, the way we treat animals, the way animals are raised, the way they are farmed, the way they are slaughtered. These are serious issues that we Muslims, I don't think we think about them deeply enough and profoundly enough. And we know from the Prophet ﷺ that kind treatment of animals, making sure and ensuring that animals are slaughtered in a merciful way, is all part of what the Prophet has taught us. And this is all, of course, connected with food. I suppose the single biggest change in my eating habit as a Muslim has been not eating pork. And you know, I know a lot of Muslims get really shocked, and I remember I told this to an audience in Malaysia and they all sort of gasped in horror when I said that pork is the sweetest tasting and nicest meat out there, and they just couldn't believe I was saying it. Although even as it comes out of my mouth, I feel a bit sick in my stomach. And that's a sort of weird thing. I mean, genuinely, if I see pork or if I even smell it, it makes me feel quite sick. But as a non-Muslim, I would say that without doubt, pork was probably one of my favourite foods. And, you know, bacon butty was probably the single most delicious thing that I would eat. And I remember my father-in-law, rahimullah, may God rest his soul, used to be very shocked that I would buy these smoked turkey rashers, which sort of looked like bacon and tasted pretty much like bacon, but of course they were 100% halal. But he was saying, well, you know, it looks like it, it smells like it, you know, why do you want to have it? Well, you know, it's halal, why not? And it's the tastes. I'm not eating pork. So I think that's a sort of strange thing. And of course, I can understand why we don't eat pork, but that's a very big change in my diet. I think the other big change as a Muslim is the way I think about food. I certainly appreciate food more. And one of the things that's changed dramatically is my ability to eat a wider range of food. I'm a lot less fussy about what I eat now than how I was before as a Muslim. And there's things I really didn't like that I just is simply my favorite food. Dates, for example. I never really remember liking dates much, but as a Muslim, breaking fast with dates in Ramadan, I mean, dates now are such an essential part of my diet. I sort of get a bit panicky if I don't have dates around, and so that's an example of how my tastes have changed a lot as a Muslim. So we've boiled the crushed prawns for half an hour. Smelling very nice, really smells delicious. So it's off the heat now, and that's reduced quite a bit. And what we're going to do is now sieve the juice, the stock. That's it. Oh dear. I have to do that again. Yeah. Let's do that again. Okay. One thing I must admit I wonder about is a lot of that butter is going to get left behind, sticking onto the, onto the actual prawns. But anyway, it's the recipe, I suppose. Well, that'll do. And so there we go. So we're going to leave this to cool. We don't want to put it in the fridge when it's really hot. We'll leave it to cool for about half an hour. Then we'll put it in the fridge. And we're going to leave it overnight. So the idea is that the butter solidifies on the top. And we're going to see, hopefully it's going to float to the top and solidify. And then we're going to be using that butter and this stock to cook the sauce for the prawns. Okay, so here we have our butter, which has been left overnight to solidify with the stock. And I can see straight away we really don't have enough butter there. Which is fine, we'll just have to make do with what we've got. We can always add some more butter, but the whole point obviously was to get that flavour. So, I'm not sure. I'm going to use this interesting looking implement. And oh yeah, that's formed quite a hard surface there. That's pretty good. So that goes out of here now onto the pan. We need to let that stock actually, we don't really want water in there, not yet. Not the butter, not the stock. I think that will do. They know how much it's needed, I don't, so it's part of the problem with modern day cooking is everything's all sort of done for you, ready, and add the hot water and off you go. But here it's very much each step. That's looking buttery now. I'm just going to let it evaporate a little bit more. Wow, there's awesome patterns of those bubbles. Again, this lovely thick copper frying pan, which I chose on purpose because it's just so lovely and easy to cook with, really. That's the other thing. And I'm hoping, without being hasty, I think that's about right. And so, put the stock in the fridge. It's been there the whole night. Next day, take the butter off the top, put in a pan to melt, add flour and stir in for 2 minutes. And then use the stock to make sauce. Add the flour. How much flour does it say? No, it doesn't. So I don't know how much flour. And of course the idea is the flour is there to thicken the sauce. That's what it's for, to help the sauce get thick. So I don't know how much we're supposed to have. My mum's complaining. I shouldn't mention that because you don't know what order you're going to put everything. Forget that. I do want to make sure I have enough sauce to cover the prawns. As I've learned from previous cooking escapades with my mum overseeing everything, that she thinks there's not enough sauce to cover the dish. I think this needs to go up a little bit. Really no idea how much. There's a lot of stock there. So if we're going to thicken it, we're going to need quite a lot of flour, I guess. It's looking good. It's looking smooth. That's the main thing. It's not looking lumpy, and we don't want it lumpy. Two minutes, so I think 2 minutes are up. So I've been boiling this up, stirring it vigorously, and fortunately, alhamdulillah, it's looking all smooth. It's really looking smooth again, and I think I'm going to be able to add all of this stock eventually to make a really nice. We'll see. We'll just do it bit by bit now. Just 2 spoonfuls at a time, and then there's not really much point. Yeah, I mean that's about right there, and it sort of stays smooth. Okay, so this sauce is coming along nicely now. I've used up pretty much all the stock. I'm going to turn it right down now. And here, I don't know if you can see, it looks like some sediment. I think it's just bits and pieces of the shell. I don't really think we want that in there, although probably there's no harm in it. It might even be good for you, who knows. But I'm going to leave it. So there we go. That's looking not very thick, but it's got some substance to it. And a few other things we're going to add to this. We're going to add a bit of milk, tiny bit of milk, a bit of tomato puree. We put in the prawns until they just get hot, add cream and dill. And it suggests you serve it with rice. Well, that's up to you. Okay, so let's get the milk and the cream. Oh, let's get the milk. Again, we're going to So a tiny bit of milk, again, I don't know what a tiny bit is. That's a tiny bit. That's probably a bit more than a tiny bit of milk. And we'll turn it up again. Get it stirred in there. And we're going to put in some tomato puree, a bit of tomato puree. Again, I don't know what a bit is, but I reckon that's a bit. It's probably just to give it a slight little tang. I have to stir that in. Just being a bit obstinate there, this tomato puree. Maybe I should have dissolved it in some, oh dear. Having got all the lumps of flour out, so I'm going to have lumps of tomato puree in. Well, in the meantime, the dill is going to be the last thing we're going to put in. It wasn't so easy to find dill here, and we could only find it as a part of a combination of herbs. Dill is really one of the most fantastic and delicious. You know what? I'm actually going to keep some of this dill and see if I can make some of my mum's carrots. She makes these delicious carrots with dill. It's just fantastic. So I'm going to keep a little bit for that, and hopefully this will be enough for our prawns. That puree does not seem to be mixing in very well, just floating around, and I don't know what to do about that really. It's a bit annoying. Having got this far, I'm not going to give up that easily. No, I think it'll dissolve eventually. So I think the thing to do with the tomato puree maybe is put it in a little bowl, add a bit of water maybe, or even some of this sauce, and then mix it in before, rather than just dumping it in straight away. So that's something I've discovered, because there's still bits of tomato puree floating around. And I'm sure even when I put the prawns in, it'll help stir it up a bit. That does smell good, and I think what we need to do is, all good cooks, you know, taste stuff as they go along. Not that I'm a good cook, but that's really nice. A bit floury, but it tastes nice. And I think with the prawns, a bit of dill and cream, it's going to be on the spot. Bit too much flour for me, so maybe it could have been thinner, less flour. I think I need a bit. I think we really need some pepper in there. Yes, I know it's not in the thing, but to be honest, my food has to have a little bit of bite to it. That's the problem. Having got used to Asian food, and in my early days as a Muslim, constantly making fun of my Pakistani friends and my Indian wife's family about how they have to put chili in everything. I said, you probably even put chili in ice cream. And then I did hear that they had actually developed ice cream with chili. You know, but now I'm addicted to the chili, and I have to have, you know, I can't, it's almost like if food doesn't have chili in it, it's not food. And I've become like that a little bit. I can still do without chili, but it has to have a bit of a bite in it. So let's wash that spoon. We don't want to be using the spoon and then still need some more, but it's definitely better. That's actually really nice. I think that tomato puree is eventually still a few little bits, but it's eventually sort of dissolving. It didn't make much difference. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use all of this tomato puree. Take a bit of this. And I'm going to mix it right here on the plate. Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. Sort of make a paste out of it. You can smell the tomato there. That's nice. Yeah, there we go. Just add it gradually, I think. I mean, that's the way, I suppose, if you want to see how it goes, instead of putting great lumps of stuff in, why not just add a little bit, taste it, see how it goes. This is very much like that. I've never cooked this before. The instructions are not precise. Get some prawns, put in some flour, some butter. You know, there's no real measurements here. It's some of these recipes are very general. It wouldn't do any more harm putting the rest of this in, I don't think. That's it. Nor a bit more pepper. Fine. There is going to be the dill, of course, giving it more flavour. Okay, that'll do. Now I'm going to put in the prawns. So we'll get the prawns from the fridge, which have been there since last night. And the idea is just to warm. They don't really need cooking now. They just need warming. So in they go.
Yeah, go on.
In they go. I think our ratio of sauce to prawns looks about right. And now this is just looking like something special, to be honest. So we've got the prawns, and we just leave them to warm. So we'll leave that for maybe 4 or 5 minutes, just to gently warm, and then we'll add our dill. Relax for a bit. Okay, so that's been about 10 coming on to 15 minutes, and it's time to try one of these prawns. Of course, the problem with keep on trying it is there might not be any left at the end. Oh yeah. That's a really nice meaty prawn as well. One of these little titchy things that disappear. That's got some proper thing, and it's nice. It's great. That is delicious. That is really, really good. And so I'm not gonna add too much cream. I think we've been ODing on the cream. So I'm just gonna actually literally like drizzle some bits in to just sort of make it look like a work of art. That's it. That's all it's going to have. and I need scissors. I don't know. I won't use scissors. I'll use a chopping board. I would normally just chop the dill in with some scissors, or I know my mum has a special thing for grinding. It's actually a cheese knife. Let's find my favorite knife here. And dill is really definitely one of my favorite herbs, but despite that, and I know I love it, I don't want to overdo it because it has a very distinctive flavor. So again, what we'll do is add the herb. To be honest, I reckon you could just serve it like that. Oh, I think that's ready to go. And turn off the heat. And that really does just look awesome. And I do have to try just one more prawn there with a bit of sauce and a bit of dill. Bismillah. And oh yeah, the dill comes through. That's really, really good. MashaAllah, alhamdulillah. Another pan of Allah's bounties to us. Alhamdulillah.